Hey everyone, it's Ken with Ken's Kreations bringing you another Silhouette Quick Tip. So in today's quick tip, I wanted to go over the Modify feature. Now, when I got my Silhouette Cameo and started using the Silhouette Studio software, I looked at the Modify window and I saw words like intersect, subtract, subtract all, divide, and it reminded me of math, which was my least favorite subject in school. And I immediately closed it because I figured I will never use any of those features. And it scared me, to be honest. And I slowly, as I became more comfortable with this software, realized how beneficial some of these tools can be. So I wanted to go through some of these amazing tools and show you exactly how you can use them. So one thing to keep in mind when using any of the Modify tools is it's really important to know which layer you're working with. And what I mean by that is if you look at this heart, right now as I move it, as you see me move the heart, you can see it falls behind this green tag. And that's because it's on a lower layer than the green tag. And it's really important when working with the Modify window to know what layer you're working on. So I always color my objects even though I'm not print and cutting, because that way I know what layer I'm working with. And if these were not colored, you wouldn't know necessarily what layer you're working with. It's really hard to tell which layer is which. So I like to color my layers just to give me an idea of what layer I'm working with. So, alright, so let's take a look at some of these features. Some of them we, in the Silhouette world, use all of the time. So for example, the Weld feature is something that I'm sure all of us use. And really the Weld feature is probably most used, I think most people use it for welding words or shapes. So obviously you can take two shapes like I've done here, draw a box around them, and hit weld, and it's now going to create a new shape. It welds the two shapes together and creates one shape. Some people use the weld, and this is probably what I use the weld most for. So let me go ahead and fill this with a color. So weld, a lot of people, so if you ungroup your text here, and then let's say I move it around like so, and then if you draw a box around this and go up to the Modify window and hit weld, it will weld those three things together. So now it's all welded. So that's probably what I use weld for the most, but it is one of those features that probably of the Modify we all use the most. Now intersect. I call intersect my leaf tool, and the reason why is I go here a lot to make to make leaves. So intersect all, basically what that is when you have items that intersect, wherever they all intersect, it's going to leave that item. So all three of these items here intersect right here. So if I was to draw around here and hit intersect, it's going to leave the piece that all three items intersect. So if I have just two circles here, and I draw a box around it, and hit intersect, it's going to leave what I call a leaf. So that's why I call it my leaf tool, because I will use this a lot to make leaves instead of trying to hand draw them. You can make really cool leaves just by doing this and hitting intersect. And there's your leaf. So that's mostly what I use that intersect tool for. Really, you can draw any, it's not just the same, you can draw circle, a square, really anything, and then basically any place that all the items intersect is what is going to be left over. So nothing intersect there, so obviously got rid of all of them. All right, so let's talk about the next one, which is something that we all use, which is the crop feature. Now, I mostly use the crop feature for my photos. So when I'm doing a scrapbook page and I want to crop a photo and make a cool design, I use the crop feature. So for example, let's say I want to take this arrow and show, basically I made this necklace for Sean with a picture of my face and a heart, and let's say I want to show an arrow down to the necklace. Well, first of all, I want to bring this forward, so I'm going to bring to front, and I want to make it a little bigger here. So once you get it where you like, this is what I love, and this is what I use the crop tool forever. So what it's going to do is it's going to crop, or what I like to say, it's going to cut out this shape within the other shape. So you draw a box around it, hit crop, and then it just crops it out. So crop's pretty self-explanatory. It's exactly what that does. And I use this probably for 99% of the time for my photos, especially when I'm doing scrapbook pages, because instead of just putting a 4x6 photo on your scrapbook page, you can do some really cool photos, especially like if you're doing a puzzle piece photo. You can take a puzzle piece and crop it to make it look like a puzzle. Just some really, really cool ideas. So that's what I use the crop for. Alright, so that takes me to the subtract and subtract all. So the subtract and subtract all, I kind of call it my cookie cutter option. So what it does is, let's start with the subtract. So what it does is it subtracts one piece from another, or what I like to say is it is a cookie cutter. So if you pretend this is your dough, let's say this tag is your dough, this is your cookie cutter. So we need to first of all make sure our cookie cutter is on the top layer, so we're going to bring it to the front. And what you want to think of it is you're basically going to cut a piece in the bottom layer. You're going to subtract whatever the top layer is from the bottom layer, and that top layer is going to go away. Or like I like to say, you're going to do a cookie cutter. So if I wanted to have this heart, I'm going to draw a box around it, hit subtract, and it gets rid of that heart, and then presto, there it is. All right. So you can also do it off to the side here, which I like. So if I want a nice heart off to the side, that's kind of a fun thing to do. The other thing I will sometimes do that a lot of people forget about is I will take my name on a tag and then go to the modify and hit subtract, and then that way you have a nice name cut out in a tag. Now, if you forgot to do subtract, it would technically still cut it out, but it just is nice. So what's the difference between subtract and subtract all? Well, the first difference is if we were just looking at these two pieces and I was to put a box around it and hit subtract all, the first thing is you're going to say, well, nothing happened. It still did a subtract. So if I move it, you're going to see it's still there, but it didn't get rid of your piece here. So I could still use this piece if I wanted to keep using it over and over and over again. So I could keep hitting subtract all, and then I could move it again and keep doing it over and over again. The other thing about subtract all is if you're doing multiple pieces. So what I mean by that is if I was doing another subtract on top of this. So let's say I have this circle and I know I want to subtract this, and then I want to subtract it here as well. So not only do I want to cut through this green piece, but I also want to cut through here. So I'm going to draw a box around this and hit subtract all. And what that's going to do is the heart's going to cut through the green piece, and the yellow piece. So as you can see, it's kind of like a puzzle piece. So this goes here and this goes here. And that's what the subtract all does. Now, if I didn't do subtract all, let me show you what would happen. And let's say I just went to this and hit subtract. See how it just got rid of those two pieces, welded them together and subtracted it. So that's the big difference. So that's the difference between subtract, subtract all, and that's how I use subtract and subtract all. It's kind of my, like I said, my cookie cutter. It's essentially you're cutting something out of the other image, whether it be a word or a shape. I use this feature all the time in my projects. All right, let's talk about the divide. I love the divide, and I use the divide a lot, especially for backgrounds. And what it does is, let's say we were to draw a whole bunch of boxes here. Now, you could just cut out all of these boxes on one piece of paper and it would divide it essentially for you. Or you can use the divide feature. And the divide feature is going to then divide all of these separate from each other. And then you can cut them out to create like a patchwork effect. So you're going to draw a box around all of these, hit divide, and now what's going to end up happening is all of these are separate from each other. So it basically creates this almost patchwork effect. And this is really cool, you guys, because you can, on the back of a 12 by 12 scrapbook or a card, you can now cut out these all separate pieces of paper. And yes, I've done it and it takes a lot of time, but then when you go back, you can actually glue these all back together. It fits perfectly because it divided it perfectly, and it almost looks like a quilt or a patchwork, and it looks absolutely beautiful. I love this feature. Alright guys, that is a quick tutorial on the modify screen. So I hope it gave you just some insight of what I use those features for. I love the modify. It was a little scary at first, but I absolutely love it for some quick tips on what you can do to snazzy up your projects. So make sure you guys are following my blog at www.creativeken.blogspot.com. Make sure you subscribe now to my YouTube videos to make sure you're catching all my Silhouette Quick Tips and my Cricut Explorer videos. Make sure you like my Facebook page and you're checking out all of my pins on Pinterest. And I hope you guys go out there and make something beautiful and magical with your Silhouette cameos. Alright guys, stay tuned for more Silhouette Quick Tips. Thanks and have an amazing day.